What up, YouTube? This is Steven, and I'm back with some news. And this time around, this particular piece of news is a little more serious than the news that I usually talk about. But I was browsing around the internet and I happened to come across an article. I first found out about it on jpopasia.com. And the title of the article is Korean pop group Oh My Girl Mistaken for Sex Workers by Los Angeles Airport Officials. This story, um, this happened on Wednesday, December 9th. I wound up finding out about it um, more or less like a week later, you know. And I was just like, whoa, like I was like, okay, like I didn't know that something like this happened. Then I do some, Googling, and then come to find out like this story has been picked up and, covered by some major news outlets, like TMZ has did a story about this. Billboard has did a story about this. Um, Even the BBC has done a story about this, and as well, like a lot of other news publications throughout the world in different languages have done a story about this as well. Like one in particular, I know there's this newspaper in Spain called El País, and they've done a news story about this as well. And that newspaper in Spain is kind of like how the New York Times is for the United States. It's a very, very popular newspaper. So I'm like, whoa, like this really is like a story. Because at first I was like, oh, it's just on jpopasia.com. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll see it. Then I'm like, whoa, okay, people are actually like covering this story. So I'm going to read the story that was posted on jpopasia.com. It's pretty short and straight to the point. I'll give my thoughts and opinions as I go, and as well give some other information as well after reading this article. All right. So again, the title of the article is "Oh My Girl." That's the name of the K-pop girl group. "Oh My Girl Mistaken for Sex Workers" by Los Angeles Airport Officials. The members of Oh My Girl were detained by officials at the Los Angeles airport after being mistaken for sex workers. Yes, they were mistaken for sex workers. But can you imagine that? Imagine working so hard, especially as, an adolescent female, a teenage female. I think the members are between the ages of 16 and 21. So kind of like around that age. But yeah, working so hard and trying so hard, and you finally get to like this place where you're like, wow, like I made it, like I finally worked for what I, got what I was working so hard for. And then you're like, oh, even better, I get to go to the United States to do a photo shoot, And then this happens, you're mistaken for a sex worker, and you just trying to, you know, get some dinero and get some fame. Get some coin and get some fame. All right, let me continue. The revelation was made by the group's agency, WM Entertainment. Quick sidebar. I'm always used to seeing SM Entertainment. I'm like, okay, SM Entertainment doesn't have a total monopoly on K-pop entertainment. That's news to me. I thought they did. All right, back to the story. A company spokesperson shared that the group had been detained by authorities for 15 hours at the airport due to their suspicions. All right, so at this point now, 15 hours at an airport. You know, so I already know that pretty much kind of like ruined or at least marred or tarnished their trip right there. Can you imagine being held at the airport for 15 hours? You know, let me go on. Let me continue. Oh My Girl was traveling to Los Angeles to do a photo shoot for its upcoming album. So, they just come in here, to do a photo shoot. So I'm guessing they got like a decent budget behind them, which, okay, even more, you know, more to get excited about, as, a young person, working hard, trying to get you some coin and some fame, right? Like, oh, like we really being back here by like, we got a good budget behind us. If, they paying for like 8 of them because it's an 8-member girl group. They're paying for 8 of them to come to the United States to do a photo shoot. Plus, you have to bring like the props and equipment and the behind the scenes people as well. But let me continue. The group's members and their staff made it through customs. Okay, but issues occurred when their filming equipment and costumes were searched by customs. All right, so like the article said, customs they cool, but then they wind up getting searched for some reason. Um, and I'm guessing because they said in the article they saw the equipment and the costumes, and I guess that aroused some suspicion. But I'm like, this is Los Angeles airport though. Aren't you kind of used to people coming in of all walks of life, and especially in Los Angeles, how like being in the industry in Los Angeles, like Los Angeles being the epicenter of the entertainment industry in the United States, and if not possibly even the world, and this kind of sets you guys off. But perhaps it came from a good place. Perhaps. I'm guessing maybe they thought they were like, well, I'll get to that part a little bit later. All right. Back to the article. After examining their costumes, props, and the appearance of the girls traveling with older male staff members, authorities suspected that the members were sex workers. All right, so they're young women, young adolescent women, probably again between the ages of 16 and 21. Plus, they're Asian, so they probably aren't. Well, I don't want to say that, but they probably have a very youthful look to them. I put it like that. They have a very youthful look with them. You know, so they see them with these male staff members. And they don't really know their relationship to these male staff members. So that possibly triggered them to say, okay, we need to investigate this. Which, okay, yeah, investigate, definitely. Because this could be like something that you need to investigate. Let's go on with the rest of this article. Their phones were confiscated, making it difficult to work out an understanding between staff and the authorities. And you have to remember, this was possibly a language barrier as well, because I'm pretty sure that the majority of the people there were not fluent enough in English to really elaborate on why they were there. They probably were not, to keep it real. I mean, they again were 8 adolescent females and the staff, older male staff members. So I don't imagine any of them being extremely fluent in English enough to explain why you are there, explain your relationship with these male staff members, explain that, hey, we are actually, performers in South Korea. Like, I'm pretty sure their English, well, their English language ability is probably what they learned in secondary school, and grade school level, probably like, hello, my name is da da da. I am such and such years old. Basic stuff. They probably don't know enough to really elaborate. And plus, when the phones were taken away, they probably can like use an app to say, like, do some translation and like be able to emote. Well, not emote, but be able to, find the vocabulary that they need to explain themselves, to plead their case, to say, hey, we're not sex workers. These guys aren't our pimps. We are, pop stars, upcoming pop stars, and these guys are behind the scenes folks. All right. Next, the company decided to fly the group back to Korea, South Korea. They just put Korea. I don't know why people do that. There's two Koreas, but I'm assuming it's South Korea. So the company decided to fly the group back to South Korea after its 10th hour being detained. Plans for its photo shoot will be made at a later date. WM Entertainment has hired an attorney in the U.S. to investigate whether the group's detention was legal. And again, yeah, these girls were on their way, to a photo shoot in the United States. And, they probably were so excited too. They're like, wow, we're going to the United States. They probably see it in the media all the time. Like, wow, and plus they're living their dreams out. They worked so hard to get to this point in their life, and like, wow, we made it, and we're going to a foreign country. So it's like, we are official. It's going to happen for us. And then to have all that marred and tarnished by in a situation like this, is terrible, because they weren't sex workers. Those dudes weren't their pimps, So it's like, okay, why, why are we still here for the next 10 to 15 hours? That's what they're thinking. Also, I'm glad that WM Entertainment has hired an attorney in the U.S. to investigate this matter, because possibly this may have been some type of like racial profiling or ethnic profiling, because oftentimes when certain people see other certain people, they see stereotypes, they see what they have been exposed to by that particular group, possibly through the media. And in this case, I think that possibly some officials at LAX saw these girls, saw them with their male staff members, older male staff members, and possibly, again, they thought they were prostitutes. And I think it may have even been heightened because they are women of color. And oftentimes in certain countries throughout the world, certain women of color are often seen as more or less sex workers. I know I heard of, there was this video on YouTube of this young lady, possibly in her mid-20s, talking about her experience in Spain. And she was African-American, black African-American. And she said there, like, black women, African women are often associated, like either you're a nanny or a sex worker, a nanny or a prostitute, And if you're coming to a situation like that, then this cards are already stacked against you, And she was neither both. She was not a prostitute nor a nanny. She was a English language instructor. And also, in Asia or certain parts of Asia, there is like sex tourism. And there's sex tourism in other parts of the world too. It's not just Asia. But that may play a part in it as well. There are certain people who come from the United States to do sex tourism with underage female sex workers. They do. That is a reality, unfortunately. And the thing is, these guys, these men, are probably not stereotypically identified where you're like, oh yeah, he looks like he's some type of a pervert. These men are oftentimes men with like, families, wife and kids who participate in this type of activity, As a matter of fact, I recently heard, like a little while ago, probably a couple of months ago, like I wound up finding out through someone that I had met at this event that I went to, who happened to live in the area where I used to live. So I met this person and we got to talking. I'm like, oh yeah, she had mentioned where she lived. I'm like, oh, I used to live in that area too. I graduated from such and such high school. you know. And it's like, oh wow, okay, you really are from that area. And then she had like somehow the topic wound up coming up where it's like, oh, do you know the such and such apartments? I'm like, yeah, I know about them. I never lived there, but I do know about them because I knew people who lived there, and I had went over to those apartments um, a couple of times throughout my time living there as a kid. Um, but yeah, come to find out that this place, what like in that apartment complex, there was an underage female prostitution ring taking place in that complex, and there were men coming there, men again with wives and kids. These are men that you probably would not clock as being those type of men, but they were coming there, participating in the activities, so to speak, having sex with underage female prostitutes who were most likely forced into prostitution via abduction and physical abuse as well. um, but yeah, she said that the police had came and wound up raiding that whole place and basically shut the whole thing down, thankfully. you know um, One of the times where the police are actually doing some good. So I'm like, whoa, like I used to live around that area. So I'm like, it's not as far off as you think, you know. So in that case, I see, on one hand, I can see where people would be annoyed, where they're like, okay, these women are being seen as sex workers, possibly because they're Asian and they're women as well, and they're with older men, and people are automatically jumping to that conclusion. On the other hand, it's like, okay, perhaps maybe this did come from a good place. Because, what if they had been, what if this, what if their suspicions were true? What if they had actually been full-fledged sex workers and those were their pimps? Then it's like, okay. But the thing is though, okay, those were their suspicions, but they got to fly home. So was that cleared up, before they got to fly home? Because if it's like, oh, they're sex workers and those are their pimps, then it's like, okay, why are you letting them get away and fly home? These people should be detained, you know? And TMZ did a story on this as well. And in their story, they offer a little more detail based on their inside informant or inside information, some information that they were able to gather according to them. So let me, you know, let me enlighten you on that. Okay, let's see. All right. But our sources say, this is TMZ, but our sources say what really happened was that the girls tried entering on a visitor visa. When customs officials noticed that they were traveling with a ton of luggage that included costumes and other markers, they started asking questions and realized the group was here to perform. Our sources say the proper papers would have been a performer visa, which they did not have. Their sources said that they had a visitor visa. And to be fair, that can get a little blurry. The lines can be a little blurred in that situation because some people are like, well, technically, well, I'm not really doing any type of business transactions or anything. So like people might not know the meaning of a performer visa. I didn't even know a performer visa existed, to be honest, until this article. I knew of a student visa and a visitor visa and a business visa, maybe a business visa, but I didn't know about a performer visa. So the girls were held in custom the customs office for around 10 hours until they could catch a flight home. So I'm wondering, is that usually how that situation works, where you are detained? Like if you have the wrong visa, you can't get in. Could you guys do some paperwork to get the right visa? Because I know that something like this happened. This is a bit of a stretch here, but this happened on the third season of America's Next Top Model when the girls went to Japan. And they went to Japan and they were also um, accused and had suspicions of them being sex workers. They weren't, obviously, but those were their suspicions, and there were some issues with their visa as well. But ultimately, they got to go into the country. So I'm like, okay, what's the protocol there when you have the wrong visa? Can you just kind of like do some paperwork and get the right visa? Will it take a couple of days to do that? I'm not sure, to keep it real. Um, let's see. And TMZ also reports that the girls were supposed to perform at the Beverly Hilton Hotel Saturday at an event called Unforgettable 2015. At least their trip was unforgettable, and that's how TMZ ends their article. So there's two different stories around here. One, TMZ is reporting, and the other is what their management team is reporting. And again, their motives could have been in the right place. But the thing is, like, okay, did they establish that they weren't sex workers before they let them leave? You know, I just want to make sure that was cleared up. And if they like, okay, assuming they established that they weren't sex workers, then possibly could they come into the country still? But I'm guessing they're like, okay, you guys can't come into the country at this point because you have the wrong visa, you know. But they said that they weren't performing; they were doing a photo shoot, and they were going to do a promotional appearance, but not doing performances. So again, that can be blurry. The lines can blur there too. So ultimately, I do think these women were somewhat profiled and targeted. One, for being women, and you know, being women, being a group of women, being women of color, you know, and as well being women who are with older male staff members. But then again, I suppose those are markers, are things, you know, sort of like things to look out for when you're trying to kind of, you know, look for things that don't seem right, you know. um, but yeah, underage prostitution is actually more common than you think, unfortunately, and it's possibly even could be closer to where you live than you know what you think, depending on where you live. From what I know, the state where I live is actually somewhat a hotbed for underage prostitution, unfortunately. It's not the only state, but it's probably one of those states. Um, so this whole situation, I'm thinking like, will they ever try to come back to the United States again? You know, I hope this doesn't kind of mar, you know, tarnish their image of the United States, and you know, because I guess this is sort of like a, a bad memory for them, to keep it real, you know. And they were going through so many, probably dealing with so much positivity, you know, because the group is actually very young. The group began in March of this year, so they're still trying to make their rounds and you know get a name for themselves. And as well, will mention that the silver lining in this whole situation, you know, amidst this very dark, gloomy cloud, is that Well, one, this has brought, underage um, prostitution and human trafficking into the conversation again, into the forefront. And as well for the group Oh My Girl, for them personally, um, this has brought them a lot of media coverage, to keep it real. This is probably media coverage that they probably couldn't buy, you know, or probably couldn't at least afford to buy at this point, because this story has been picked up by a lot of news media outlets. As I mentioned before, you have like the blogs, definitely. Then you have like TMZ. Then you have Billboard. Then you have um, the BBC. You're official when you made it on the BBC, right? And plus the newspaper in Spain that I mentioned, El País, as well as like some other probably news publications. So while I'm sure that this is a horrible, terrible memory for them, at least they were able to get something out of it. To look at the bright side of the situation. I mean, to keep it real, I didn't know about this group until this story came about. I wasn't checking for this group, to keep it real. I mean, did you guys know about Oh My Girl, this K-pop girl group Oh My Girl, before this story came out? Because they did just come out in March, so they probably haven't even had enough time to really like do a lot of promotion anyway, you know. But yeah, I had like before this, I didn't know who they were. Before this, I wasn't checking for them either. But after this, I'm like, okay, I'll kind of keep some tabs on you guys. And also in the articles that people are posting, they're also posting links to like their music videos. So they possibly may see like a large increase in like the amount of viewership on their music videos, as well. So, again, at least something positive was able to come out of this, and at least no one was arrested. But I'm pretty sure that was like somewhat a slightly frightening event for them. To be detained in a foreign country, you don't know the language, you have these people around you, you don't know what they're talking about. These guys in these uniforms, you're like, okay, am I being targeted? Like, what's going to happen here? They may think that they are like trying to do some type of like sexual thing. But to sum it up, I think that the motives were in the right place, but at the same time, I do think that these women were targeted because of their gender, because of their race, and as well, I guess even because of their luggage. I guess women can't have a lot of luggage. So I guess a lot of women, y'all better be careful. Y'all gonna end up being accused of being sex workers if you have too much luggage. But I guess I don't know. They thought they were trying to like film adult films or something, or take adult photos, maybe. But yeah, I guess in the situation, ultimately, while they were targeted, I believe personally, while they were targeted, I think that given the situation, given the circumstance, I think that the authorities did ultimately do the right thing. But I will not deny that gender and ethnicity, like race and ethnicity, played a part in that. You know, because again, they're women and they're women of color, and if you view like some people do view women of color as being in only one mode, which is a sexual mode. Some people, and plus they're coming from a place, Asia, that's foreign, and a place that you may hear about being associated with sex tourism and underage sex, underage female prostitution. So again, they were stereotyped, they were profiled, discriminated against. But unfortunately, it was proper calls, and ultimately, I think that the group should continue like WM Entertainment should continue with hiring that U.S. attorney to do the investigation. I think they should do that. You know, I think they should go full force with that, and just make sure that they were, within their rights. They weren't taken advantage of. Because I know that they spent a lot of money for this trip. That trip was not free of charge for them. You know, and they probably had booked hotels, had booked locations, possibly were paying everyone to go there as well. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that they lost some money on this. Um, you know, but I could go on for probably another 10 or 15 minutes, but I'll bring this video to a close, you guys. So thanks a lot for watching. I know this video was a bit longer than the videos I usually post, so I apologize for that. Apologize for taking up, so much of your time. But thanks a lot for watching if you did make it to the end. And definitely comment, let me know what's up. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? What's your feelings about this situation? So again, thanks a lot for watching, and adios and goodbye until the next video.